This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily on a Victory Monday here in the Peg after the Bombers did it again to the BC Lions last night. Nathan Rourke, no problem. He falls to 0-4 lifetime against the Bombers while being 10-1 against everybody else in the Canadian Football League. And don't look now, but the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are nipping at the heels of the Lions and the Rough Riders after back-to-back wins against BC, who came in as arguably the best team. We'll give Montreal that nod, but certainly the top team in the West. It is all systems go for the Bombers after that ugly start to the season, and they get ready to get back to Princess Auto Stadium on Friday, filling the place with blue and hopefully getting closer to that 500 mark, and most importantly, a playoff spot, which they have right now on account of their tiebreaker over the Calgary Stampeders. It was a wild weekend in the Canadian Football League. There is lots to talk about, and that will be a big part of today's show. We'll talk about last night's game with Farhan Lalji, kind of more from the Nathan Rourke side of things, as well as Chad Kelly's reinstatement to the Canadian Football League after his 9-game suspension. And then we'll really focus in on the Bombers a little bit later on with Jeff Hamilton. We did have some hockey news. We've got a trade request to announce. And we also have a trade to announce in Cody Ceci going to the San Jose Sharks. So we'll touch on the hockey news. Obviously a big weekend for the Gold Eyes as they hit back to the road. All coming up today on WST. We will hear from Nathan Rourke as well as Zach Collaros from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Just before we bring Michael Remis in, a huge thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Man, we are going to have a packed edition of CFL 110 this week. It's presented by Garage Living Winnipeg. Wherever you get your podcasts, make sure to download CFL 110. Click the subscribe button there. Help us out. And you can check it weekly, usually on Wednesdays, right here as well on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel. Also want to thank our friends at Coolbet Canada. We've got our poker tournament tomorrow night. We'll tell you about that in just a minute if you'd like to join us, as well as Princess Auto, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, the Gold Eyes, Assiniboia Downs. They're back at it tonight down on the west side of the city. F Apparel, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend, Manitoba Battery, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, Little Brown Jug, Rollies Transfer, Canadian Club, the Beer Can, along with Hoagie Boys and Next Door on Sherbrooke. And we will get, of course, to a Why Not question of the day in a little bit for our friends at Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Shout out to everybody in chat that's with us live today. How was your weekend? Mine was amazing, and it certainly ended up on a very positive note for Bomber fans last night, Remo, as the Blue and Gold hit the road and get it done against Nathan Rourke and the Lions.
Yeah, good to be back here, Huss. And I did say...
Oh, yes, and welcome back.
Yeah, I did say to you on the weekend, we just need to have the Bombers win so we can have a good show today. And be honest, I picked BC. A lot of people did. But the Bombers defense, they're legit. They're back. And the way things happen in the West Division this weekend has Saskatchewan losing, BC losing, Calgary losing, and Edmonton winning. I mean, you got two huge games coming up against Saskatchewan where the Bombers could pass them. You think you would win against the 2-8 Ticats at home this Friday. All of a sudden now the Bombers are in a really good spot, and the West is certainly up for grabs. And I don't think I would have seen this happening the way things were going a couple weeks ago. And for BC, the shutout streak against BC has broken up in the fourth quarter with the Sean White field goal. It was, oh man, I have the time written down. 106 minutes and 5 seconds of shutout football. Just incredible work.
Incredible. I mean, a shutout in the Canadian Football League is so rare, but to do it against anybody, never mind the BC Lions, for as long as the Bombers did. It was truly amazing. We're going to get to all of that in just a minute. I see a lot of great comments in chat right now. Shout out to Isha Boy. Bruce had a blast in Vancouver, cheering on the blue and gold. Gotta love it. I did have the Bombers, Remis. I did have faith that they would go in and get it done. And how can this defense not give you confidence every time this team's going out right now, the way that they are playing? Big game for Nick Dembski. As I said, we'll dive into all of it. But I do want to mention, just before I forget, and we'll touch on this later on in the Coolbet Lines, but if you're listening on the podcast, tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Winnipeg time, we are doing our first ever joint venture with our pals at Edmonton Sports Talk. Of course, Dusty and I host the Lock Shop every day at noon. We're doing our first Lock Shop poker series tourney over at Coolbet. If you want to play with us, and there is a $100 bounty on Dusty's head and on my head, what you're going to want to do is go to coolbet.com. If you're a regular Coolbetter or playing sports bets with us like we do every day on the program, you're already signed up. No worries. Just click on poker at the top. Otherwise, sign up. Don't forget, if you do sign up at Coolbet, when you're making your first deposit, use the promo code WST. You get a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. But when you do that, you'll see poker at the top. Click on that, and then there's download the poker app. I highly recommend that. It's far better, easier, smoother playing on the poker app. I think you can do that on mobiles as well. I'm doing it on my computer. And then once you're in, check out tournaments. You can either search Lock Shop, click on that, or just simply go down. Everything is timed. It's tomorrow night. For those of you in Winnipeg on Central Time, 9 p.m. The entry is 20 euros. It's on a euros-based browser, which is basically $30. And we're going to get at it tomorrow. So Remis, you're fired up for this. You've been talking about this for the last little while. It's finally coming to fruition tomorrow. Yeah,
we wanted to do this during the Stanley Cup playoffs where there was an off day, but there was never an off day for the guys in Edmonton Sports Talk as they went all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. So I'm trying to get my friends in. I said, hey, we got a poker tournament and bounty on you and Dusty. Very exciting. I can't wait to see how this goes. And I haven't played a lot lately. I used to play, a lot back in 2006.
Back in the day?
Back when Chris Moneymaker won the World Series of Poker. I think I watched every episode, including 7-Card Stud, Raz, Omaha, Pot Limit, No Limit. So I'm ready to go. I'll have to, dust off the rust like Nathan Rourke tried to do yesterday, and hopefully I have a better showing than he did in his return.
All right, I am getting savaged in the chat right now for my hair. Like, what's going on with my hair? We did put in a camera today.
We got a new camera. I wasn't sure if people...
Listen to these comments. Yeah. Listen to these comments. Huss, get a new hair color? Not that I know of. Comet with just a scud. Huss should go Grecian Formula 16 on the sides. Jay Miller's talking about getting my tips frosted. It's Victory Monday. We killed it I had honestly maybe my best weekend of the entire summer. I did not think that I was going to get hammered like this.
We got
in the chat. What did I do to deserve this, people?
We put in a new camera that's more detailed, and I think we have to work out some of the color settings. That's why we were late. We were trying to make it look nice, and we got it good enough. We're like, okay, we got to go. It's 105, but some more tinkering will be taking place later on.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you. You look fabulous, Huss. Derek Schmidt. Yes, a little gray on the sides. I guess the hater's gonna hate. Listen, I'm here for it all. There's nothing. Listen, after a Bomber game like that and the weekend I just had, there's literally nothing any of you in the chat can do to bring me down. Trust me on that. By the way, speaking of the weekend, just before we kind of dive more into this Bomber game. First of all, I got to thank the gang out at Grand Pines. We had I usually do an annual round with my pals Toth, Greg Pasechnik, and Balls. We went out. It was an absolutely perfect day. We had an amazing round. Course is in mint shape. Then some fun over at the Birchwood, and then back to the lake. Shout out to my mom for some great hospitality as always as well. Water was beautiful. It was perfect. It was just absolutely awesome weekend. And then came back, albeit a little worse for wear, but I rallied, if you will, and got a chance to go to, of course, our favorite course here, Breezy Bend, who have been such great partners with us for many years on the program, and had the opportunity to MC and sit down with Kevin Cheveldayoff, who was the keynote speaker as part of the annual member guest tournament. They always like to bring a guest out that, you know, is of great interest to the membership as well as all of their guests. And listen, Kevin Cheveldayoff's at the top of the list. So, you know, we both got there early. We weren't golfing in the tournament. So I actually had a chance to sit down with Chevy for a good hour or so, waiting for the tourney to end and get going. He was awesome last night. And again, like, I know everyone wants, like, oh, tell us what's going on with Rucker McGrory. I mean, there's some things on current business that we're going to find out when they happen. I mean, that is not something that any NHL general manager is just going to be firing out casually at a golf tournament. I will tell you, though, you know, obviously Chevy a lot of times in the media, like, it was interesting talking to him just about the job and everything before it happened, about, you know, how damaging erroneous reports and rumors and things like that can be to the players. Like, I kind of get it why they keep their business so tight to the vest, probably more so than any before. And a big part of that is social media and some of the ways that it affects players and their families and the room when you're doing that. There's, and this is not unique to Winnipeg, this is everywhere, more so than any time before. I think the other general managers really lean on each other to not have loose lips. So, I mean, if you're hoping for me to run down and give you the full game plan of exactly how things are going to run out, obviously that wasn't happening. But certainly a lot of optimism about the upcoming season, which goes without saying. You know, the start of the playoffs and start of training camp, everyone's feeling really good about it. You know, he did mention that there's still a little bit of work to be done, and that will continue over the course of the next little bit. I mean, did not seem concerned at all about where things are at, not having Cole Perfetti signed yet, you know, as maybe the top order of business. And also really keen to see what some of the young players like Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, Cole certainly as well, Ville Heinola can do when they get to camp. Camp should be really exciting. And then, you know, he kind of treated us to a few other things. I mean, I was asking him about, there was a lot of feedback just from members about questions that they wanted, and we used some of them. But the one guy that kept on coming up was Dustin Byfuglien, and Chevy goes way back with Buff, back to Chicago. And what I'll take away from this more than any, and again, you know, we talk about crazy rumors. I mean, how many stories have you heard people in Winnipeg talk about the real reason why Dustin Byfuglien left the Winnipeg Jets? I mean, there are so many insane theories out there. And really without prompting. I was asking Chevy about just Buff, what he did when he came into camp, because he notoriously didn't really train very hard, or maybe at all. And then he would go in and get on some of these strength machines and almost break the things. I mean, he's the most naturally powerful individual maybe we've ever seen in hockey, and then just such a unique bit. But talked a lot more about the player that he is, and they're still in touch all the time. He's back here. He golf fished in the KBI. He was mentioning that he called Zinger out to be with him in the boat a couple weeks ago. By the way, shout out to Zing. I think he had some work done on the knee, so hopefully he's back in action very soon. It's not just players that get the off-season surgery. But he also then sort of got going and kind of went through the story of Dustin Byfuglien showing up for camp that final year, getting out there, and then coming back and saying that, you know, he's done. That was it. And, you know, to hear it from Cheveldayoff speak, it was very emotional. I mean, certainly from Chevy's side of things too. Very clear, though, that Dustin Byfuglien, the mark that he made in this community with this team, with the fan base, which goes without saying, was a very, very special one. And that was a really emotional time. And I mean, famously with Buff, like we said, this wasn't, you know, he said normally he'd get in the truck, but he'd leave Minneapolis. And by the time he crossed the border and got into Winnipeg, he was ready to go. And that year, that wasn't the case. He was on in that skate. I think he said he did about half the skate, and he got a couple passes into his skates from Jansen Harkins and just said, screw it, and went back in. And then he had called Chevy and said, hey, Chevy, I gotta talk to you tomorrow morning. And Chevy knew something was up. Like, that was not Buff. Buff didn't want to have a meeting. He didn't want to. He said, if he could have just showed up for games and then gone out for the boys with beers, that would have been perfect for him. And you know what? It ended up with him going over to his house and, some tears shed and, knowing that was it. And in true Buff fashion, just kind of dropped this on his wife as well. I don't think this was a big family conversation. So anyway, some really interesting stuff from Kevin Cheveldayoff last night for everyone that was in attendance. And again, this was a little different than a normal radio interview talking about the current state of the team, what's happening with this guy. And he did, it was really fun. It was a pleasure to be a part of. So thanks again to Corey Johnson and everyone at Breezy. A lot of WST listeners out there and great supporters of ours for having me involved in it. And as I said, a unique chance to kind of talk to Chevy outside of the day-to-day, as well as some really interesting things about the job of the general manager, relationships between GMs. And I did ask him as well about, just, hey, what did you think? Like, what was the chat like amongst your group when St. Louis went in and signed those guys in Edmonton? And they said, unlike most times when things like this happen, this wasn't maybe a huge surprise because everybody knew where Edmonton was at and the challenges they had moving forward. But you don't see it very often because teams like Winnipeg, in this situation right now that they're in with Cole Perfetti, while he's unsigned and a restricted free agent, you have to account for what if a rival team goes and does exactly that. So certainly the Jets are in a fine position. Most of the other teams are, but Edmonton wasn't. And it was kind of neat to hear about, just the thoughts on that, why it doesn't happen more. If they thought about doing that at times. And I mean, the answer always is yes. But again, you're making every decision in the best interest of your team. And it was very clear the goal every year is to win the Stanley Cup. They knew they had some shortcomings in the playoffs last year. And we're going to be all over it in a few weeks on the other side of the Labor Day weekend when the Winnipeg Jets come back to Winnipeg and get ready for another season and their first under head coach Scott R. Neal. Reem, I know we're going to get into some of this Bomber stuff, and Farhan's going to join us. We will have plenty of audio as well from both of the two quarterbacks last night. Anything else from the weekend you wanted to quickly touch on before we kind of dive headfirst into all things Bombers, including a call with Farhan Lalji?
I just thought all the CFL games were really great this weekend. It's funny, on CFL 110, you and Jeff were saying, road teams, it's so hard. No one can win on the road. And look what happened this weekend, Hustler. Every single road team won 4-0. And a lot of these, I thought these games were great. Ottawa winning in Masoli's return 31-29. How about Montreal's comeback over Saskatchewan 27-24 with more controversy from the command center? And I'll say in real time, watching the video, I'm pretty done with, freeze framing stuff and zooming in 1000x. I thought Davis Alexander was in, and I don't think there was enough.
So did I.
Sorry, I didn't think there was enough to overturn, and I was surprised that people were so mad online because I watched it. We rode at the lake. It was awesome. We had a projector, set it up on a screen outside, and I didn't think you could overturn it. And I thought it was a great play, and I actually thought it benefited Saskatchewan, the fact that he scored, because it gave them time to come back and kick a tying field goal. Unfortunately, their kicker went 0 for 4, or missed 4 field goals in that game, which lost it for Saskatchewan. Edmonton putting the boots to Hamilton. I didn't see too much of that one. It was tough for Hamilton with the injuries that they had right off the hop, Powell and Hakunovanu. But a great game last night for the Bombers. Much of the same. And, I've been dead wrong 2 weeks in a row about the Bombers against BC. And you have to wonder if the Bombers are the best team in the West. And I always thought they were better than their record, but now they're certainly playing like it the last 2 weeks here.
Well, this was finally a nice week for me. I did have faith in the Bombers the last 2 weeks. You had a little bit of a lead in our season-long pick'em contest, so I would have sniped you on that one last night. And it was funny, for all the talk we had about how dominant the home records were for the most part this year, I did throw down a little Montreal, Edmonton, Winnipeg plus 7-12 parlay in the lock shopping on the show on Friday that came through as well. By the way, we got to thank Aaron Bronstetter for a hell of a pick. Duplessis by submission at 6-1 when he joined us last week. That was the highlight of the UFC as well. Remo, we're going to be calling Farhan, right?
Yes, I'm going to call him. I don't know, after these reads, I can call him during.
Let me just quickly give a shout out to our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg. Stay tuned for CFL 110 coming up on Wednesday. And of course, Garage Living Winnipeg has got the push on right now heading into the fall. If you want to have a clean, organized garage this fall before the snow flies, give Garage Living Winnipeg a call at 999-1234. It's been a very productive summer for the guys at Garage Living, transforming dozens of garages in and around the city. Now they're ready to get clients booked, garages designed and installations complete before winter. Don't miss your chance to clear the clutter and transform your space, organizing and beautifying your garage with polyaspartic floor coating, made in Canada premium metal cabinetry, and slat wall storage solutions, not to mention the options for a lift so you can work on that car, work on that sled in the comfort of your beautiful garage as opposed to outdoors. Check out their website at garageliving.com. Our friend Pat Kanuga is on the case, loving his shift from early morning radio guy to garage designer. Give Pat a call, 999-1234 for a chat about what can be done in your garage, a free in-garage consultation, or can make an appointment to meet him in their showroom at 981 Main Street. Again, 999-1234, Garage Living, garages made for living. If you have a move, this is a transitional time. Summer's finishing, a lot of people on the move. If you are, take as much of the stress out of the move as possible with the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba for over 60 years, family owned and operated. Our pals over at Rollies Transfer. They've been doing it, as I mentioned, for now into their 7th decade. And with their extensive logistics business, they are all through the city and all through southern Manitoba on a daily basis, which means flexible routes, flexible timing, and incredible prices on trusted white glove service for all of your valuables on the move. What you're going to do is get to Rollies.com. Beautiful relaunched website. Top right corner, you'll see it says request an estimate. Click on that. Use the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. And the friendly staff at Rollies will turn it around quickly with a very competitive estimate quote for you and get you moving with that white glove service that Rollies is famous for. For your next move, make it Rollies. Go to Rollies.com for more information and to request an estimate today. I have to thank our friends at Consolidated Supply. We were using a few Consolidated Supply things out at the lake on the weekend. Those Crest power tools are amazing, but they've got so much going on at Consolidated Supply. You know, we were at Grand Pines, we were at Breezy on the weekend. They are the go-to guys for the golf industry as the irrigation specialist and the leaders in irrigation systems and solutions. They've also got artificial turf if you want that dream putting green in the backyard. And of course, Golf Carts is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. New, used, supplies, accessories if you want to trick yours out. Other great options for your property, including hot tubs, amazing outdoor kitchens, and of course, they are the leader in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East. You can find out more on everything Consolidated Supply has going on online at cte.ca. And hey, huge shout out to the Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery. This was another beautiful weekend, and many of you were in boats. You were camping. You were riding bikes, an ATV. You need batteries for all those things. And when it comes to batteries in Manitoba, now for all the toys in the winter for your car, your truck, Manitoba Battery is the spot where you can shop local, get the best service in town, and get the best prices, period. As Donnie and the gang are beating the pants off the big box stores. The original location's open on Logan. The new store is open at 452 Dovercourt. And if you can't make it in, you can still get those great prices by giving them a phone call or ordering online with free delivery anywhere inside the perimeter for any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Manitoba Battery for all your battery needs. Shop online today at manitobabattery.com. All right. We're going to welcome in Farhan Lalji in just a minute. Farhan's running around, so we're going to grab him on the horn today. So I think, Remis, are you going to call him and I'll be able to hear?
Yeah, I'm just going to call him. I'll just call him right now.
Excellent. So we'll get Farhan on the line and get his take on what he saw last night at BC Place in the return of Nathan Rourke, which was the story that took over the Canadian Football League all week long.
Yeah, I'm just going to dial it in. And yeah, there's so many CFL stories, Huss, that you could talk to. Chad Kelly reinstated. I mean, the list, Chris Jones going to the Ticats. The Edmonton Elks.
And not getting paid.
Yeah, the Edmonton Elks sale.
But yeah, fire away the call. And let's see if we can get Farhan on and talk about the return of the Bombers to prominence in the West, although still 4-6. Lots of work to go.
Yeah, and we have to talk about Austin Mack. You know, he signed with the Falcons. Now he's back with Montreal. What an addition for him. Remember Austin Mack in the Grey Cup? That's how good he was.
He was amazing. He's doing it. Farhan, it's Huss from Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you?
Good, Huss. What's going on, buddy?
Well, we've got a pretty excited fan base here for a little Victory Monday after that big game last night. Both of these teams have had very different seasons so far. The Bombers with that real rough start, and now BC kind of hitting the skids as of late, and the Bombers sweeping these 2-game series. But this was far more than a football game in an 18-game regular season. This was the return of Nathan Rourke to the Canadian Football League. And while it didn't go as great on the field, certainly seemed to add a big buzz to the game. Take us through last week. I'm interested, were you surprised that this happened as quickly as it did? And next thing you know, he was in town and then starting yesterday night?
Yeah, very surprised when it went down. I talked to Nathan when he was in Atlanta, and I think he was fully intending to spend the entire season in the NFL. I think that thing in Atlanta when he got signed, I think it was very much set up for him to be the number 3 there. And for, a few different reasons, things didn't work out. And then rather than go through the process with additional NFL tryouts and go in as a camp arm and do all of those things, I think the way things went down in Atlanta really disillusioned him, on top of what was a challenging situation in New York as well. So I think there was a real tipping point after he got released in Atlanta, and just how that happened and how sudden all of it was that made him change his mind quickly and decide to come back to BC, right? So the fact that, when he came back, I know that Rick Campbell said, we're not 100% sure. Well, you just cut Jake Dolegala, right? So you are sure. It's not like they were going to start Chase Bryce in the last game or rush Vernon back. So we knew from day one Nathan was going to start. And I think, quite frankly, he wanted to. He was excited to just get to play again after the level of inactivity he has, or has had. But it happened fast. There's no doubt. There was huge buzz league-wide at our network, in this market, additional ticket sales, all of it. It was there. It was a part of it. I'm not surprised that he struggled, but I didn't expect him to struggle to that level, right? But the fact that it was going to take him a little while to get back acclimated really shouldn't surprise anybody, given the whirlwind he'd been on.
We had Brady Oliveira on the program, I guess it was last Tuesday when the news was announced. And, I asked Brady when the guys were going out to practice when they heard about Nathan Rourke coming back. And, he said there was a little bit beforehand, then it was official afterwards, and immediately said, as a Canadian player, how excited he was to have Nathan Rourke back and how big it is for the Canadian Football League. He's a player that young Canadians can throw their jersey on and go support it. He knew it would mean the excitement. And then I heard you talking later on. I think it was, $250K is his salary for this year. You had speculated that they might be able to sell enough tickets, additional tickets on Sunday to pay for that. What was the Nathan Rourke effect heading into the game, like in the market and in the stands last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably in the end added about 2,500 to 3,000 seats game. So, they would have needed 5,000 for him to make that money, for them to make that money. And I think that'll happen by the second game at BC Place. They'll make that money back in additional ticket sales, trending versus what the outcome was. So, Amar Doman's a smart businessman. There's not an issue there. They're going to make that money back. I mean, you people talk about the concerts and how much they're spending. Well, understand they made money on their concert this year because kind of, the bigger you go, the more you spend, the more you have an opportunity to make. And they showed that at the season opener. They're going to do that with Nathan. But ultimately, look, Nathan's got to get back to the level that he was accustomed to being at in 2022, and I have no doubt he'll do that. But there's a lot of buzz and a lot of attention. The first day there, it was like being at a Canuck practice with all the media that was there. And I've said before that there's not another player in the CFL that can move the needle like Nathan Rourke, right? In every market, not just in Vancouver or not just in the market he's playing in. I think like a Brady Oliveira has the ability to move the needle in Winnipeg, but Nathan Rourke has the ability to move the needle league-wide. And I think it's good for the league. It brings out all sides, right? Because you also get the detractors and the haters and the people that are just tired of hearing his name and saying that it's too much, which for me, I don't get, because, and maybe it's different in Winnipeg because the team gets a lot more attention, but we are begging for more coverage in this league. And we have one guy that can deliver it everywhere, and then people say, well, we're hearing his name too much, and, we're tired of it. And so that part kind of annoys me, but the buzz is real.
The buzz absolutely is real. I mean, coast to coast, people were talking about this game on the weekend. I haven't seen the TV ratings, but I'm sure they were even better than their usually strong numbers. And obviously, we had a marquee matchup between the Bombers and the BC Lions. And listen, as much as this game was all about the return of Rourke, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers showed up and continued what they've been doing for the better part of the last month. And that is turning into a team led by a defense that is just not given anything. Farhan, I mean, you've seen these last two games. The Bombers were in a really bad spot going into the game at home against BC, where they shut them out. They were 2-6 on the year, making uncharacteristic mistakes, a record that was shocking to anyone that had seen this team. What have your takeaways been from Winnipeg and what you've seen in these last 8 quarters against the Lions?
Well, I think they're getting healthy and they're getting comfortable, right? I mean, when you look at the number of players that just didn't even take part in training camp, and I know most of those guys were on the offensive side of the ball, but the defensive players there was a lot of injuries that was happening there and some turnover, and they had to kind of get right in certain spots, and it took some time. And Mike O'Shea believes in stability and not panicking, and that's paid dividends for him, right? So they've got some guys that have made big plays for them. I look at Terrell Ford, and he's really evolving. Like if I had to pick my all-star team today, he'd be an all-star corner, right? Like he's doing some really, really good things. And he was originally kind of a field side guy, and that's kind of the entry-level spot for a DB in the CFL. But he's turning into a real impact guy now, in my opinion. And, Brandon Alexander's game's kind of rounding into form. He's not maybe as play-to-play impactful statistically as he was before, but, he's still a guy you got to pay attention to. And, Evan Holmes coming into his own. Dedrick Nichols is exceptional, right? So I just think they've gotten healthy and they've gotten more comfortable and they've managed to withstand the worst of it. And even those last 2 losses before they played against BC, the defense was really good. The offense was still a problem, right? And the offense has a ways to go yet, right? Because I'll be honest with you, Huss, BC's defense is terrible, right? Like they're awful, and they hung in there in 2 games against Winnipeg. So I think Winnipeg should have really blown the doors off BC's defense, and they didn't. So I do think Winnipeg's offense still has another level they can get to. And I think BC's offense is in a bit of a funk, but they'll figure it out. And, full respect to Winnipeg, but Calgary to BC the week before, and Calgary's defense isn't as good as Winnipeg's by any statistical measure. So I think you got to give full credit to Winnipeg, but I also think BC's doing some things wrong with receivers that aren't getting separation. And Winnipeg had the exact same game plan as Calgary did, right, where they brought 3- and 4-man pressure and defended with 8 and 9 on the back end, right? And whether Vernon Adams was the quarterback or Nathan Rourke was the quarterback, and whether Calgary was the opponent or Winnipeg was the opponent, BC's offense, they've got some things to figure out, because if BC's going to win football games, they've got to win them 40-35, because that defense, in my opinion, in the 2 games against Winnipeg, played really, really well. I don't think they can play any better, and I think they've got some serious holes, right? Like the Lions D lacks playmakers in all 3 levels. They don't tackle particularly well. So, an offense like Winnipeg getting Kenny Lawler, I think they should do more, and quite frankly, right? So, BC's D played as well as it could play in those 2 games against Winnipeg. The offense matchup was a little bit tough. So, curious to see what Winnipeg does the next week, and curious to see what BC does against Ottawa, which is an ascending defense as well.
Well, I was going to ask you just about this upcoming game against the Red Blacks, who've had a great start to the season. They're 6-2-1. I mean, yes, the Lions have lost 4 in a row. They're still just a half game out of first place, and it is as wide open as it's ever been at this point in the season. How much benefit will Nathan Rourke get this week from having a game under his belt, a full week of practice, and do you expect to see this BC offense look quite a bit different next weekend than they did in this quick turnaround with him arriving from the NFL and starting last night?
Yeah, I mean, they'll get better for sure. Nathan will get more comfortable. And also the first 2 days of the practice week, right? There was a 3-day practice week. Hollins and McInnes didn't practice, right? Like McInnes was limited the first day, didn't practice the second day. Hollins didn't practice either day. And you can see his sluggishness coming out of cuts on that first interception, but really throughout the game, right? Like he's a shell of the player he was a month ago. Whereas in McInnes' case, I think it's more a lack of opportunity than performance, right? So I think they'll be better, but I do think that Ottawa is also a very good defense. They're kind of coming of age a little bit. They've dealt with a lot of growing pains earlier, right? And now they're reaping the rewards of some of that now. Their secondary is getting better. So they're doing some good things. They defend differently than Winnipeg and Calgary. I'm curious to see if they continue to do what their defensive identity is, or if they just look at what Calgary and Winnipeg did against BC and say, we're going to follow that conservative game plan because that's the way to beat these guys, right? So we'll see how they do it, because I think that would be the right thing for them to do. I think if they did it differently, they might play into BC's hands a little bit and give them some more one-on-one matchups they can take advantage of. But I like what Ottawa's doing a lot, and I'm curious to see if Masoli or Drew Brown plays. But Ottawa's for real right now.
Farhan, we've never had a scenario like this where the entire division is separated by 2 games this deep into the season.
Isn't it awesome?
It's phenomenal. And I heard my pal Morency talk last week going in. It's almost like we're starting over again, even more so with the Bombers and the Elks winning this week, and Calgary, Saskatchewan, and BC are all taking a loss. In your opinion, who is the best team in the West?
Well, look, if you ask me today, I would say Winnipeg, and I say Winnipeg just because I have so much belief in Zach Collaros and and the coaching staff in Winnipeg, and I just think that when these critical games happen, they are there. But I got to be honest with you, like Winnipeg still needs to prove something to me. They've won 2 in a row. Like that's it.
They're
right?
4-6
against the Lions team that has some flaws. So my point is that if you're any of the 5 teams in the West, whatever way things have turned for you now, they can turn again tomorrow, right? Like if you're BC and you've lost 4 straight, and all of a sudden you can pull one out in Ottawa, and then you get them at home in Touchdown Pacific, you can all of a sudden flip your season really quickly. And same thing, for Winnipeg, same thing for Sask, right? I know it's been of a struggle without Trevor Harris, but they can turn that around really quickly, right? So, I think a team like Calgary, to me, is a team that kind of has the lowest ceiling and the highest floor, right? Like I think what you see from Calgary is what you're going to get. Win some, lose some. They're just going to kind of stay steady, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think the other teams have the ability to get on a roll positively or negatively. Do you know what I mean? So I'm interested to see which of those 4 teams continues their current trends or which of them turns it back around, because I think that can happen too, right?
Well, 100%. I mean, the Bombers are going to need to take care of business at home against Hamilton, and then you got back-to-back games against the Riders that could dictate what happens with these teams and where they're at going down the stretch. I can't remember a more fun and exciting scenario in the West at this point in the season. Hey, Farhan, just on the way out, I know we're kind of focusing on Winnipeg and BC. You and Naylor have been all over the Chad Kelly situation. Just for folks that maybe have, just heard that he's coming back, what can you tell us about how he ended up getting to this point of being reinstated to the Canadian Football League, and how much scrutiny he'll be under on and off the field moving forward as he returns to the Argos this week?
I think he'll be under a lot of scrutiny, right? I mean, there's a lot of people not happy that he's back. He obviously had to go through a bit of a process with everything he's dealing with. So he had to settle for the last chance thing, and all of that. So it's been a bit of a challenge for him. And the Argos have looked at Nathan Rourke's situation. They may back off from starting Chad Kelly this week. So that's kind of where we're at.
Farhan, thanks so much for doing this. Always appreciate your time. Look forward to another great week in the CFL coming up. Have a great one, and thanks again for jumping on.
Thanks, yeah.
Appreciate it. There's Farhan Lalji of TSN. Of course, talking Bombers and CFL, we do it every day for Princess Auto, and Princess Auto Stadium will be the place to be again on Friday. The Bombers coming back. Everyone thought they might be 2-8 when they get back home. Not so fast. A 2-game sweep of the BC Lions, led by this defense that is absolutely killing it right now. Hopefully we'll have some great weather. Hopefully we will have a packed house. And I can tell you that if you haven't already got your tickets for Friday night, I would suggest that if you're in the city, get out there, and we will see you there. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Bombers. And, of course, Princess Auto Stadium, the home of the blue and gold. The party gets going on at 5:30 in the Princess Auto tailgate zone before the game. Pop by for $5 beers, $3.50 poppin' hot dogs, entertainment, inflatables for the kids. And, of course, you can pop by your local Princess Auto here in Winnipeg on Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or shop online 24/7, 365 for the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Thanks again to Princess Auto, headquartered and founded right here in Winnipeg, for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. I would also suggest, speaking of that game on Friday, that they order a little extra Canadian Club and all of these spirits from the Beam Suntory factory. Of course, Canadian Club is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We'll see a lot of cocktails there. We'll see a lot of the ice-cold Canadian Club and ginger ale pre-mixed in cans for you at the game. And, of course, those are all available for you at any trip to your local Manitoba liquor marts, and CC and Ginger in cans also available at your local beer store. The next time you go in thinking of beer, maybe make a change and try that CC and Ginger Ale. Big thanks to Canadian Club for their support of the Bombers. And, of course, Winnipeg Sports Talk. Gang at Wallace & Wallace has had another very busy summer, as you would expect it. I mean, listen, you've seen their fences and trucks all over the city. They are the fencing and overhead door experts, and they've been doing it in Winnipeg since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. They've got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And, of course, if you need a replacement for your garage door, Wallace & Wallace has Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Give them a call at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace, a team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And it was funny, I was just doing the lock shop earlier with Pat and Jake from Coolbet. Pat got married last weekend. Their other coworker got married this weekend. Got another one next week. Listen, wedding season is fully underway and probably deep into it, but we're coming around the corner after Labor Day, where a lot of people are going to be back in the office and whatnot. Bottom line is, if you need to up your menswear game heading into the fall, get on down to F Apparel today. Great deal right now, 25% off any purchase of 3 shirts. And, of course, they've got custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, and custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the biggest and best selection of menswear accessories in town. If you are in a wedding or a wedding party, talk to the guys about a 15% discount when the wedding party gets their suits at F Apparel. You can see them in person at 190 Smith Street. You can find out more online, or make an appointment to come in for a fitting at that's EPH apparel.com. All right, we were going to get to a little bit of this audio from Zach Collaros and Nathan Rourke, but we'll hold off on that because the Hammer is locked, loaded, and ready to go before he returns to Winnipeg. Let's bring in our pal Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. How was the weekend out in Van?
Oh, it was amazing, man. Vancouver's so awesome. It's been a couple of years since I've been back, and I'm glad I got you because I wanted to get back on my notes column, my post-game notes column. So I jumped on as soon as I saw Farhan wrapping up, so you couldn't get to some audio clips. So that worked out well for me. So did the weekend for the Bombers, for the weather here, for everything that's beautiful West Coast, man. It's what a weekend for Winnipeg, but even better one for me as I got to be here 2 days earlier.
Well, it was a crazy weekend in the Canadian Football League. I mean, the Riders sort of. I liken the Riders lost to Montreal.
I'm so giddy about CFL 110 this week.
I was just about to say.
I haven't stopped thinking about it because I have so many feelings, Huss. I'm overwhelmed, to be honest.
That was the game. That was the game for the Riders, like the Bombers game against the Argos, where by every measure they should win that game, and through mostly their kicking game, and of course a very controversial call late, they didn't get the win. But yeah, CFL 110 this week is when we'll really dive into Chad Kelly, Chris Jones, and the West Division that's almost restarting right now with all the teams packed so closely. And of course, the Bombers taking on the Ticats on Friday night before the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl. But let's get to it. And I asked Farhan this beforehand. I mean, you were out there before the game leading in. Before we talk about what happened at kickoff, what did you gather from the return of Nathan Rourke, the buzz that gave the league, and as well as last night's game in Vancouver?
Well, I'll say this. I'll poke at my friend Farhan Lalji. It's pretty fitting that he didn't show his face on camera today after his bold claims for Nathan Rourke over the last couple weeks. You know, that was something. I kid. I love Farhan, obviously. And he actually, to his credit, I thought he was very honest. You know, took a lot of the points I was going to mention about the BC Lions. Of course, he's on the ground there. And, you know, he predicted that the Lions would lose this game. He felt, you know, as he mentioned, he didn't think it was going to be as bad as an offensive effort from Nathan Rourke, but he predicted it nonetheless. But yeah, I mean, there was a ton of buzz. I mean, there was a ton of buzz ever since he signed on Tuesday, you know, not just in Vancouver, across the CFL. People were, you know, appointing the BC Lions, myself included, as the now front runners of, you know, to win the Grey Cup. I mean, that was all obviously, you know, connected to what he had done in the 2022 season and taken this league by storm, and you know, what was a potentially historical season cut short by a foot injury. You know, he looked damn good that year. So, you know, I think the assumption amongst a lot of people, again, including myself, was that he was going to be able to take, you know, 644 days off, you know, use 3 practices and then, you know, return to form. Clearly that was not the case. That was far from the case. Nathan Rourke looked human. He looked like a guy who hadn't played in 644 days, who hadn't, who had only 3 practices with an offense that, yes, he knows the offense. He knows Jordan Nisimic, and what he's done, in his schemes in BC. But he doesn't have Brian Burnham anymore, who was his go-to. He doesn't have Dominique Rhymes anymore, who was his go-to. He doesn't have Lucky Whitehead anymore, who was also his go-to. He's got a bunch of new receivers, as Farhan mentioned, 2 of which, in Alexander Hollins and Justin McInnes, the 2 best receivers on that team, only practiced limited throughout the week. So all those things, I think, you know, you add all those things up, minus the hype, and I think you got what maybe we should have expected. It's only going to go up from here, as Nathan Rourke said in his post-game comments. But as far as debuts go, I think that was the Bombers' defense. Ton of credit to them, because they put a hell of a lot of cold water on that homecoming.
Speaking of going up from here, as we talked about in the Lock Shop on Friday's show, the one thing that just kept on going up, up, and up was that Bombers money line number, that if you got on last night and waited a little bit, you got a very, very nice return. For the Bomber, first things first, this defense, Jeff, I kind of have to laugh thinking about some of the conversations we had early on in the year. You know, okay, they're bringing back Brady, Dalton Schoen's here, Kenny Lawler's here. You know the offense is going to be at a certain level, and they're going to have to be because we weren't too sure how this defense was going to look with some key departures, as well as Jordan Younger coming in and taking the reins. I mean, early returns were mixed. This last stretch of defensive football over the last 4 games, including the loss in Saskatchewan and Toronto, has been some of the best I can remember. How have they done it? And I mean, listen, maybe just speak to the way that this defense has been playing and how this is now the anchor of the team. We always talk about it's great and it's fun to focus on the offense, but defense truly wins championships. I would suggest that the Bombers are playing at a championship level on the defensive side of the football, and that is the reason they won these last 2 games against BC.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you talk about the conversations earlier in the year. We have to go all the way back to training camp because that was really the time where we were talking about, the defense and how a lot of almost all of the focus was being put on the offense. Of course, as you mentioned, bringing back guys like Dalton Schoen, Brady Oliveira for big raises. Returning much of an attack that has been the bread and butter of this team and has been the top attack for the last couple seasons. So, that was the comparables. And then, of course, you throw in Jordan Younger and his, what he was going to, although he knows, him and Richie Hall are not too dissimilar, was bringing in a different kind of style and attitude to a defense. So you're curious how that might affect things. And then, of course, there was a lot of new guys. I mean, even at the beginning of the season, 1, 2, 3 games in, Huss, it was very clear that it was the offense that was struggling. It was the defense that was trucking along, and the efforts by the defense were even more impressive by the fact that they just kept getting dinged and dinged and dinged with injuries week after week after week. Their defensive line was decimated, and now as you see, a lot of these guys coming back, a lot of the guys who were in, some have come and gone, some got their opportunities and were out the door the next day. Others got injured and have come back and have impressed. And I think what you're seeing is a healthy group, a consistent group, a confident group, and playing on and with strengths in all areas, right? I mean, you look at the secondary and they're just playing incredible football. The defensive line, the sacks could be up there. They haven't got those numbers necessarily. The pressure is certainly increased, but when you have a secondary that's playing the way that they're playing. Look at this last game, Huss. Nathan Rourke had time in the pocket on several occasions. It wasn't like he was running for his life the entire game. The defense did get, some decent pressure on him at times, including, certain examples with three rushers. But there were several times where Nathan Rourke was just sitting in the pocket looking for someone to throw to, and he couldn't find any open receivers. That's a testament to the secondary and the linebackers in that second and third parts of the defense. That's and that's where the confidence is. And, I asked Dietrich Nichols about this group after the game in the locker room, and, he put it simple. He said, nobody cares about, who performs. Nobody cares about, who makes the biggest plays at any certain time. Essentially, he's saying it's a selfless defense. And, I'll remind the viewers and yourself perhaps that was exactly what the offense used to say when they were lighting it up, that they didn't care about who got the ball or who caught the ball. So the attitude in a lot of ways has shifted over to the defense. And while they've always kind of been the bread and butter of the 2024 edition, they've just taken it to a new level to the point where they're actually winning games. You include that 25-0 victory, obviously, against BC, and that is as good as it gets. So this team, I wrote in my game story last night that it'll be interesting to see where this defense lies at the end of the season as far as best groups in franchise history, assuming they continue to trend this way, which is pretty impressive when you take into consideration everything I just said about the defense and the struggles they've gone through throughout the year.
They've dragged this team out of it. I mean, arguably, they put performances together when the Bombers were 2-4 in Saskatchewan and in Toronto that should have had this team at 4-4 heading into the BC game. That wasn't the case. Offense has certainly cleaned it up and stopped killing themselves. That's been a big part of it. But I mean, a 106-minute shutout streak against arguably the number 1 offense in the league with 2 different quarterbacks, both excellent QBs, is something to be said. What did you think of the offense overall? I mean, I look at the numbers, and Zach close to 300 yards. Nick Dembski, best game of the season, made some big plays. Every time I looked over, and again, so I'm kind of paying attention on the phone or on the screen during this event that I was at last night, and went back and looked at it afterwards. Every time I looked, it seemed like Brady Oliveira was eating up 8 or 9 yards on the ground. I was really surprised when I look at the stats afterwards and saw that he only had 10 carries last night. Just thoughts on what you saw from the press box yesterday on the Bomber offense. And I will say this, they don't have the same urgency to maybe take chances like they would if the defense was giving up 25 or 30 points a game. But overall, starting with Zach Collaros, what did you think of the offensive performance in yesterday's win?
Yeah, I think Zach's gotten more consistent and with each week. I thought he played well. I mean, he's going to want that interception back. That was not a good pass. That was not a good decision. But it didn't cost. I thought the offense was. I don't mean this disrespectfully because I thought they played well. I thought they were slow and steady. And when you have a defense that is playing the way that the Bombers' defense is playing, what you need from your offense is some level of consistency, moving the ball, limiting the 2 and outs and forcing your defense back on the field right away, winning the field position, finishing drives when you can. I mean, that score 2011 flattered the BC Lions 100%. I mean, obviously because of the fact they scored a touchdown with 2 seconds remaining in the game to make it, and the 2-point conversion to give them a majority of their points. But there were times in the third and fourth quarter where it felt like a closer game, that it really was one play away from change. We've seen this in the CFL all the time, one play away from, all of a sudden the Bombers are dominating and it's a 3-point game. I look at a guy like Mike Benson. I said something to him in the dressing room after the game. I haven't interviewed the long snapper all that much in Winnipeg, but if he doesn't make that shoestring tackle on one of those returns from BC, we might be having a different conversation today. I mean, and that's really what it takes in a game like that. So, I think maybe some more points for sure. Mike O'Shea mentioned after the game, the Bombers did some silly things. Look at I don't want to pick on Kenny Lawler. I thought he played well in his return for sure. And you mentioned Dembski. I mean, who's more happy than Dembski that Kenny Lawler's back in, because he had a lot more space out there. That's to be sure. But Kenny Lawler went offside, and what I think was one of the worst penalties you could honestly have on that short yardage. You just have to stay on side. That's it. That forced a punt. There was, as I mentioned, that there was the interception. They need to figure out what they're doing with their short yardage right now. That's the third straight game that they've been unsuccessful in completing a short yardage play with Chris Strevler. And while it didn't burn them in 2 games, it did in 1. And those are moments in games that can change the mood. But I thought there's certainly more to give with the offense. And I think I know you ask Zach Collaros, you ask Brady Oliveira, you ask Kenny Lawler, you ask Nick Dembski, you ask anyone on the O-line, which I also feel like is trending a lot better. I think the O-line is playing some great games, opening some of those holes, including for that big 23-yard gain from Brady Oliveira that led to a massive embrace between him and Mike O'Shea on the sideline. I just still think there's a lot there's still a lot more to give, and I think that's what should be exciting for Bomber fans as Winnipeg continues to climb the standings here, is that you can still ask for more from your offense. I don't know if you can ask more from your defense, but you can certainly ask more from your offense and special teams, and if the Bombers can get that, this could be a pretty scary team as the season moves on.
There's some really interesting numbers coming out of these last 2 games, and shout out to Remis for getting all this down. So Rourke was 8 of 25 for 126, no TDs, 2 picks. Rourke and Vernon Adams Jr. over the course of these last 2 games, 16 for 42, 200 yards over 2 games, and 3 interceptions. And, those numbers are insane, ridiculous. You never see those in the Canadian Football League, but that's what this team has done. And you mentioned the secondary, and we all knew about Dietrich Nichols. I will admit, coming into the year, knowing that Terrell Ford was going to be out on the island at corner, I was wondering whether he would be sinking or swimming. He isn't just swimming. He's the number 1 rated corner in the league by PFF. We just heard Farhan come on today and it said if I was voting for All-Stars right now, he's at the top of the list. I know there was a lot of talk about a Canadian playing a position that's not traditionally occupied by Canadians. The Bombers have one of their own in Ford who is putting together, albeit quieter because of his position, equally incredible season right now for the Bombers. What a find he's been, and he seems to get better and more confident every game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with Farhan. I'm with PFF. I'm with anybody who's been watching the Canadian Football League week in and week out. Tyrell Ford is good. He is playing at an all-star caliber level. You mentioned, being twins with Trey Ford and how, a lot of the attention has been on Trey Ford, of course, as he's a Canadian and a quarterback and dynamic and always has the ball on every play. It seems like, Tyrell Ford is pretty special. He's getting the ball a lot more often than you'd expect from a corner. So at the same time, though, this is a guy who went straight to the NFL, right? I mean, Tyrell Ford had a shot in the NFL. Trey Ford didn't. So, it's not like the talent is a surprise. Maybe, I think it took him a little bit early on to adjust to things. There were some moments in games, like I said, particularly in the first few games where, he got burnt on some plays. Some resulted in touchdowns, but, like every good player, adjusted, learned from his reps, got better in practice. And now you see him, not just Tyrell Ford, it's Evan Holm beside him. It's Dietrich Nichols and Terrell Bonds on the other side. It's the veteran in Brandon Alexander. It's Red Huck Cromdy, who's as the dime back, also plays heavily into the secondary. It's the communication and the chemistry between them. It's not one guy just going out there and playing schoolyard ball and following the football. It's the schemes. It's the positions that Jordan Younger puts them in. It's what he demands of this defense. That that versatility as he kept on saying early on. He wants these guys to be athletes. He wants them to be making plays. And while I think the takeaways were, you look at the takeaways and the Bombers aren't up there, at the top of the league in them. When you factor in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, they are certainly near the top. It was a dismal first, handful of games, certainly through the 0-4 start where they just weren't generating many, if any, takeaways in games. And now you see this defense gelling, you see them playing and those are coming. So, I think this is certainly a great sign, and I think there's more to come with this group. Tyrell Ford absolutely has been a special player.
Now, this is going to be a topic that we get into on CFL 110 on Wednesday, but I'm going to throw this to the chat right now. We're kind of talking about this with Farhan. Our why not question of the day today for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray is who is the best team in the Western Division right now. And the crazy thing is, Jeff, you can make an argument, I think legitimately.
For anybody and nobody.
For 3, I don't know if you can make the argument that Calgary is that team. Edmonton is the hottest team with their wins, and they've beaten BC and Saskatchewan along the way. Yeah. Certainly what the Bombers did to the BC Lions are going to open up some eyes. And BC and Saskatchewan, we can't forget about what they've done so far, although they've sort of hit the skids as of late. So we'll save that topic for CFL 110. But right now in the chat, who is the best team? I have a feeling we might get a few more votes like Farhan with the Bombers being the team that's got it going on right now. Couple other things. What was up with Big Hill?
So Big Hill looked like a non-contact injury, looked like he was grabbing for that right hamstring, an injury that he's had in the past. I'm hearing some things that aren't good. I don't think you'll be seeing him at practice when the team returns to the field next week. Whether it stays that way throughout the week, we'll see. I think he's doubtful. I did see him walking out of the dressing room yesterday. He didn't have a fun expression on his face. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't down and out either. But I don't know what to read from that. But he was walking. I didn't see. I mean, hamstrings are. You don't wear a cast on a hamstring, so there was nothing that was revealing. But what I'm hearing and the buzz around the team is that Adam will definitely not be at practice, or assuming won't be at practice, and could be out for next game.
That is not great, because even as the rest of the defense around him has sort of stepped up, the loss of number 4 in the middle could be significant. Maybe it's fortunate that they got the Ticats, who are in absolute disarray right now.
The thing with Big Hill, though, and I would never wish injury on the guy, absolutely not. But, just with his age, just with his injury history, if there was ever a silver lining in this, Huss, would it not be better to kind of be out for some games now? Now, I know the Bombers don't want to be out for some games now, and I think we should talk about where exactly the Bombers stand here, despite 2 victories in a row. But at the end of the day, I mean, did we really think Adam Big Hill was going to go 18 games this season after missing all of training camp? Now, again, I'm not saying that this is some awesome situation for him or this team that he, could be out for a week or two with this issue. But, I think if he was to play clean football for the next 5, 6, 7 weeks, I think you're playing with fire a little bit. I think you'd have to manage kind of his workload. And we know Mike O'Shea doesn't do that. So, maybe in a way this could be viewed as a good thing by the end of the season.
But big picture, I wanted to talk about Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters. So O'Shea became last night the 11th coach in CFL history to reach 100 wins. I believe I heard on the broadcaster afterwards, he and Kyle Walters winning 100 games together, the first time that had ever been done in the Canadian Football League. And we remember the way
they already had, that's the thing, they already had the lead. Like they have like a 24 game lead on Jim Pop and Mark Tressman, and what's the other? Dave Dickinson and Huffnagel, I believe, is the other one. Would that not be? No, maybe not. Nor was it be? Jim Pop for sure.
I can see Dickinson. Be in there? Bottom line is these guys are making history every time they go out. 100 wins, a massive milestone, and you think about the way that this started, and this group of men, Wade, Kyle, Mike, basically taking over in the scorched earth era after the Joe Mack. Like Mike O'Shea is 2 wins behind Bud Grant for the franchise all-time record of coaching. Sometimes you need to kind of take a step back and really look at where this team and where this franchise is and how impactful that Kyle Walters and especially Mike O'Shea have been here. And we often joke to start getting the busts ready for a statue at some point. I think you can pretty much count on that eventually. But the fact that we're talking about 100 wins for these two individuals together and Mike O'Shea tracking down Bud Grant, which could potentially, I mean, depending on what happens in these next couple games, he could break that record in the Banjo Bowl if they can win the next two. It is just, phenomenal what this group has
in the
done.
Labor Day Classic. Or I guess he could,
They
he could beat
in
the
the
record.
Labor Day. They could come back
sorry.
in Winnipeg and become
totally.
the winningest coach in Bombers history with a win if they can win those first 2 games. And again, they'll worry about Hamilton first up. But, I mean, you've covered this game for a long time. I've been around this team my entire life. When you actually sit back and think about where this team was for 30 years and what this group has done, it is absolutely historic.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm laughing, Huss, because I don't not that I disagree. It's not like I disagree with what you're saying. It's just these guys have been kings in this city for years. Like, I don't think you have to sit back and really think about where this team has gone. I think the fan base has done that in the evolution of Mike O'Shea's time. I mean, it was, a lot of people were calling for his head in the first few years that he was, or first 2 years for sure, while he was here. He struggled, he lost twice as many games as he won.
What about after week 4?
There was, week 4 this year. Maybe people need a little bit of a reminder now, but that's just a testament to just how damn good they've been. That the expectation is so high now because of what, Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters have been able to achieve here with the Bombers in Winnipeg. And, tons of credit to them. It's so fitting that Mike O'Shea would answer it the way he did yesterday when asked about the 100th victory. He went right to, well, I have a ton of losses too. And, those are the things that you remember. And I'm writing about it today. And, Mike O'Shea likes to be a tough guy in a humble way, right? Like he's not arrogant. He's not a jerk like that. He's just humble in that approach, but he's lying. He's enjoyed every single one of those 100 victories. There's he just does it with the people that are closest to him, his players, his family, his people. He is in the room pumping his fist after the games, getting the boys going after victories. They absolutely love it. So, and he gets that moment before he comes out to the reporters. He's letting the guys know. He's giving them kudos for their victories. And while I believe him, he definitely thinks about the times where he could have been better, most notably the last 2 Grey Cups in the fashion in which this team lost. I have no doubt in my mind that those games haunt Mike O'Shea and continue to haunt him, but he does enjoy this. I think he enjoys what he's been able to build here. I think he has a lot of pride in it, and and he deserves all of it, right? I think he deserves, everything that he's had his way. He got it pretty hard early on. A lot of talk even that, talk about the shorts, and Gary's tweet last night was kind of funny.
That's the best.
With the shorts comment, taking a dig at one of our former guys, but it's been a wild ride, man. It's been a wild ride for them. They've gone through the ups and downs. There's lots involved here, right? There's certainly a lot of skill. I think Mike O'Shea has set the bar for coaching, not because he's some dynamic X's and O's guy that he can go into the offense and work things around and clean things up, and then go over to the defense and do the same in the special teams. In fact, I would argue it's almost the opposite. I think he empowers the people around him. He puts a staff around him. He believes in them. That loyal to a fault thing. Well, it's certainly, there's certainly times where it's kind of bit this team in the ass. I think the reason why Mike O'Shea is so consistent to that approach is because far more often it's worked in his favor. And that okay. Here we are with Team Beside the Tweet. All right, Remo, let's plaster this one down. So I think when you can take into consideration everything he's achieved, he's brought a lot of pride. He's allowed the Winnipeg fans to be some of the most arrogant, ridiculous fans in the CFL, because he's delivered the championships for them to be that way. So the people that are dumping on him, he is the only, not the only reason, but he is a big reason for why you can go chirp every other fan base, and why you can call the Bombers and ask for his head this year, because he's given you that confidence to feel that way about your team after nearly 3 decades of ineptitude and losing.
Listen, and as I said, we're going to get to the Chad Kelly situation, Chris Jones reemerging with Hamilton on the weekend. But before we go, we'll just quickly talk about this week for the Bombers. A relatively short week, right? You're playing on Sunday night, you're traveling back from the West Coast, and then a Friday night game coming up. But it is the Hamilton Tiger Cats who are in disarray. I mean, I follow a number of people that have covered this team for a long time. The word that came out from Saturday's game often was disgraceful. And now apparently Chris Jones going to be doing some volunteer work for the Ticats over the remainder of the regular season.
Look, and I was hoping I'd get a chance to say this, because, I was in the locker room after the game. It was joyous. There were great vibes. This team feels like they're trending back towards, that Blue Bomber football that they used to preach and used to play and execute week in and week out. There's lots of good feelings. There's confidence going in there. We're seeing an awesome play by the defense. But this team is still 4-6, and the margin for error is slim. Now, the Bombers have gotten some help in the West. There's no doubt about it. As you mentioned, Huss, it's literally up in the air. The Bombers could win the West. They could take the same route to the Grey Cup that they had the last couple of years, because the West doesn't seem to have a team that wants to take things by the horns. But this is a team. The 2 victories here, which account for half of their wins this season, are against the BC Lions in a pure free fall. So, the Lions weren't good in the week before they played the Bombers. They were certainly horrible the first game when they played. They were bad. They lost 1 point to a Calgary Stampeders team that we just don't even understand. They came into Winnipeg. They got their asses kicked. They then played Edmonton and got dominated again. So these are 2 victories against 2 bad teams. I'm not trying to, or 1 bad team, but right now. But what I am saying is that there's a lot of work here, and this team cannot look at Saskatchewan coming up here in the Labor Day Classic and Banjo back-to-back. They can't take the Hamilton Tiger Cats for granted. As you mentioned, they are going to be playing playoff football. So they are going to be bringing it. They are not happy. They're not good, and that's the good thing for Winnipeg. But they're going to have to be on their P's and Q's to beat this team for sure. And so, I think even with that victory, I'm like Farhan. I still don't know if I'm sold that this is a dominating Bombers team, but I think we're going to find out a heck of a lot in that back-to-back with Saskatchewan. And I think that's really where we can start, depending on where the Bombers are. Now, there's still going to be a ton of football to be played. And I'm not saying if things fall off the rails here, or they go 1-2 over the next 3, that this season's somehow over. It's not. But I do think they're facing some stiffer competition coming up here. Because if you think about it, Huss, like this victory yesterday, it's great. It puts them back in the conversation, puts them in 3rd place in the West, back in the conversation of winning the division, just 1 game back of of Saskatchewan and BC. But had they lost that game, they would be tied with the Edmonton Elks. And so, like I said, there is, the margin of error is
2 games
so slim
between
right now.
the top to bottom of the division.
Exactly. So it's the slimmest margin of errors, and the Bombers going to have to be proving it week in and week out. And while I think it's good that they're feeling good and there's confidence there, I'm not suggesting they are, but they can't be patting themselves on the back here. There's still tons of work left.
Yeah, no, listen, with that start, they found some ways to lose, and it was unlike anything we'd seen over the last 4 years under Mike O'Shea. It seems like they learned some hard lessons. They are playing much better football. They're taking care of the football on the offensive side. And listen, let's just get this win on Friday and then set up what could be one of the most highly anticipated Labor Day games in a long, long time between these two teams, and technically could be a battle for first place by that time. Mm-hmm. Saskatchewan's in Toronto to kick things off on Thursday. The Bombers get the Ticats on Friday, and then we count down to Labor Day weekend. Hey, have a safe trip back, and we'll look forward to catching up with you on Wednesday for what might be the most packed CFL 110 of the year so far.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I booked a super late flight this evening, so my plan is to continue scribbling, get my thoughts out for my post-game column, and then if anyone out there sees me biking around in Stanley Park, come say hi, because I'll be there for the afternoon.
Anything good to eat? Anything good to eat on the menu over the course of this weekend? What was the highlight?
Always. So when you go to, oh my God. For this morning, I went to the Templeton, which is one of my favorite breakfast spots. It's like straight out of diner, straight out of the 60s. It feels like, I don't even want to say 70s, 60s. I had this unbelievable brie egg gluten-free croissant breakfast that was just unbelievable. And they didn't
have bougie places like that in the 60s.
You have to go. This isn't bougie. It's just amazingly, it's Greasy Spoon through and through. Google it. It's amazing. You have to have poke when you come down here. So, definitely hit up a couple poke bowls for sure. And then I had, they have such an amazing Chinatown here in Vancouver. So, I was getting in on the pho and some of those delicacies because of the Asian community here too. Fried chicken, get out here. You know what I mean? This is if you want a lot of options, this is where you need to be. And so, no shortage of options out in the West Coast. But as I always say, when I'm out in the West Coast, as much fun as it is and how beautiful it is, I'm still an East Coaster through and through. Love the East Coast. Shout out to my East Coast friends out there, which are you probably count on one hand, but definitely a good time here nonetheless.
Well, you can go coast to coast, but the place to be Friday is going to be right here in the middle of the country, Princess Auto Stadium, Bombers and Ticats. Hammer, thanks for doing this. We'll see you Wednesday on CFL 110 right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
You bet. Take care, my man.
Good stuff. There is Jeff Hamilton joining us from BC before he heads back after that big Bomber win last night. I'll tell you what, we're going to hear from Nathan Rourke and Zach Collaros in just a moment. And then we're going to kind of dive into some hockey news coming out of the weekend. But I do want to give a big cheers to our friends over at Little Brown Jug. What a weekend it was. I will raise a glass to last weekend and to what's looking like a real nice week heading into Friday night at Princess Auto Stadium. Today's show is brought to you in part by Generic Lager from Little Brown Jug. Your basic lager, just better. The beer of the summer from LBJ, from my humble opinion. LBJ made the taste you crave with the name that says it all with this impressively standard lager. Whether you're at a Jets or Gold Eyes game or watching from home, grab a cold one and cheers. You can pick up Generic and all the incredible Little Brown Jug beers in person down in the Exchange District at 336 William Avenue. You can also cop it at your local LC or vendor, and now available, as I said, at the ballpark. Fish back next week for what will be a big season-ending homestand heading into the playoffs. And, of course, at Canada Life Center, as Jets season is just around the corner as well. This is another great week to get your butt down to the beer can. When the weather's like this, we don't get much of this throughout the entire year. This is when you want to get into patio season. And for those of you that want to take the patio experience to the next level, that is what the beer can is all about. The biggest and most beautiful beer garden restaurant in town, just at the foot of the Osborne Bridge behind the Granite Curling Club with the best selection of Winnipeg's local beers, a number of other drink options, including some great frozen ones, and incredible food cooked up by the evil geniuses behind Cosmos Food Cantina. Of course, you can also get their great eats down in the heart of Wolseley. 116 Sherbrooke is next door, right adjacent to Good Neighbor Brewing. And if you're looking for the biggest, baddest sandwich in town, South Osborne is the place to be. Hoagie Boys, the legendary Hoagie Boys. If you're a big sandwich guy and you haven't been to Hoagie Boys, what are you waiting for? Quick note on Beer Can. And either later on this week or next week, Harry Black from the Pana Boxing is going to join us. On the Labor Day long weekend, on the 1st, they're having a special boxing event at the Beer Can. So we'll find out a little bit more on the boxing scene in Winnipeg and tee up that event. But if you are a boxing fan, make a point of keeping your eye out for that event coming up at the Beer Can on the Labor Day long weekend. Hockey season is just around the corner. You know, I hooked up with Greg from Royal Sports last night. He had just gotten back from Montreal for the CCM. I think it's the 125th anniversary of CCM, which blew my mind. But then we got talking about hockey season, and it is here right now, and Royal is busy. It is the hockey superstore. If you've got a youngster just starting into the game, or you've been playing for 25 years and you need an update to the equipment, Royal Sports, hands down, the hockey superstore in town, as I mentioned, for over 40 years. Sticks, skates, every piece of equipment you could need, full goalie gear, and hockey players working there to help you get the right fit and the best piece of equipment for all of your needs. Get ready to drop the puck at Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Of course, you can follow them on Instagram as well at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. I would expect one more tent sale, a famous Royal tent sale, before we get into October. And hey, they're celebrating at Boston Pizza right now. Great deal, celebrating their anniversary. All those medium specialty pizzas, just $19.64. You can pop in store and grab it. You can grab it on Skip or delivery. But of course, around here, we're talking about taking advantage of the best sports bars around, and that is Boston Pizza. Next game you're getting ready for, gather your crew at your local BP. Get those deals on those gourmet pizzas, world-famous Boston wings, and wash it down with a few ice-cold schooners as well. You can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's just wrap the Bomber conversation before we get into some of the weekend hockey news by hearing from the winning quarterback last night, Zach Collaros. It was all about Nathan Rourke going into the game, but it was Zach Collaros that got the win. Here's Zach on how well the team played in all three phases of the game, especially that Blue Bomber defense.
Yeah, I mean, our defense has just been unbelievable all season long. They played a heck of a game. I thought the special teams did a great job, and, you know, we did enough. I thought we did a pretty good job of possessing the football. You know, missed on some opportunities. There's early in the game, a couple throws that I'd like to have back that, you know, might have been able to extend it for us earlier. So I got to get better at that. But other than that, I thought we did a pretty good job.
I'm wondering, you know, with the how easy is it to play when your defense is playing that well?
I mean, honestly, it doesn't change much offensively, to be quite honest with you. You still go out there, you stick to your game plan, and you worry about what they're doing defensively. You don't have the luxury of, you know, watching from home or watching from the stands, of being like, well, the defense is playing really well, so it doesn't matter. Obviously, you'll be cognizant of, I mean, you're always cognizant of protecting the football, right? So that's always at a premium. But yeah, anytime they're playing lights out like that, it's just unbelievable to watch and to be a part of, you know, in a sense, you know, during the week of practice, and it's really cool to see.
All right, there's your winning quarterback last night, Zach Collaros, and it was some great stuff from Zach. He also spoke after the game just on the offense, how they look, bringing Kenny Lawler back into the fold after missing the majority of the season after being injured in the game one.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the offensive line did a great job all night long, especially moving them in the run game. They always do a great job protecting me in the pass game. Having Kenny back is it's something definitely that defenses have to be aware of. He said to me afterward, I got to shake off the rust, but I thought he really looked like himself out there. So he'll only continue to get better, as the other guys will. Nick's Nick. He always does a great job. That touchdown that Chris scored there in the third quarter, they did a good job of doing a squeeze scrape. The linebacker in the end there for BC, I had to throw it behind Nick. Nick makes the guy missing, and it goes from 2nd and 11 to 2nd and 3, and that's why we scored a touchdown there. So he always does stuff like that for us.
All right, so there is a little more from Zach Collaros post game. One more for Collaros, and big picture. I mean, the team's still 4-6. They've got a lot of work to do to overcome that very poor start. But Zach was asked if he feels like the Bombers are sort of looking more like themselves as they get into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we have to believe in what we're doing, stick to it, and execute. I think we're put in a good place. Often from an execution standpoint, we just got to do it as players.
Zach, Mike just said that in the 0-4 start, the people were still coming to work, and still he didn't lose any faith. What have you seen since then that you like?
I mean, you don't have any other choice. You come to work and you work, and we have the culture that we're not going to let guys hang their heads or quit. If you're going to quit, just leave. I appreciate everybody coming to work and trying to get better, but that's the expectation, right? The expectation obviously is to win every game. You start the season the way that we did. We're not happy about it. I think we've won 2 in a row now. We got to keep stringing wins together. We're not happy with where we're at the moment. Obviously, we're happy about tonight. We just got to keep playing, good football.
All right, there is Bomber quarterback Zach Collaros, and that was some awesome audio from Zach. I mean, sometimes he's a little bit more guarded. You could tell that was a huge win, and the guys were feeling it afterwards. But to his point, Reem, none of that matters if they take a step back a Friday against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. But, man, they win that game, and, I mean, I'm all ready for Labor Day weekend, to be perfectly honest right now. This home-and-home series against the Saskatchewan Roughriders is going to be amazing, and the Bombers have played themselves right back in to the mix in the West, and the Riders have to really be kicking themselves after that game on the weekend. I likened it to the Bomber game in Toronto, where they were clearly the better team. They did everything they needed to do to win the game, but they got an iffy call against them, and Brett Lauther had probably the worst game of his career, going 3 for 7. And when one of those misses goes back the other way for 128 yards for a touchdown, it's tough to win. As we talked about with Jeff, the West is wide open, but this is a huge few weeks for the Bombers going forward. But they can't already start thinking about Saskatchewan until they get the job done against the Ticats.
Yeah, I think when you said the Riders have to be kicking themselves about the missed opportunity, that was unintentional pun. As you said, 3 for 7, 4 misses, one of them going back for a touchdown. That was a great game. And here is the Western Division standings. Saskatchewan and BC with 5 wins. Winnipeg and Calgary with 4. Edmonton 3-7. Saskatchewan is in first. They are 5-4-1. They have that tie. BC 5-5. And I think the Bombers are solid. I always like to look at point differential, 208. They've all played the same number of games, so there's nothing like skewing anything. Saskatchewan, I mean, it's all really tight. 264, 249 against. BC's got a negative differential after, 2 pretty bad offensive performances. Winnipeg, far and away, the least points allowed, but also have the least points for Hustler. And Calgary and Edmonton with up there with the most points allowed. So I'm not sold on Calgary. I think, I agreed with what Farhan said. Edmonton, we'll see how they continue with the coaching change. 3 wins in a row for them. Also, the ownership change. I don't know what that means. Maybe, less uncertainty. I don't know how that would affect the players. But they seem to be surging. They did win with MBT at quarterback after Trade Ford got injured. So I'm curious how this shakes out. But 2 very big games against Saskatchewan and a big game Friday to keep it going. It is a home game against Hamilton. They are 2-8. The Bombers should win, but sometimes what you think should happen doesn't always happen. So they're still going to have to have their heads screwed on right and take that one seriously as they go 1 game at a time here for the rest of the year.
We'll check out the lines in the CFL in a minute. They're all out at coolbet.com when we get to that. But just before we wrap this up, listen, this was the talk of the entire country all week long, Nathan Rourke returning to the Canadian Football League and then getting the start after such a quick turnaround. It did not go Rourke's way yesterday, and he owned it afterwards. In fact, apologizing to the fans first up before answering questions. Listen to this.
If you don't mind, if I'd like to say something, and hopefully that answers all your questions. I want to take this moment to publicly apologize. That was not my best football right there. As a quarterback here, it's never a one-person job, but it is the position where you have the ball in your hands every single play, and I didn't make enough plays. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and make excuses. In terms of it being a short week and getting into the offense again. And it's definitely a tall task when you play a team like the Bombers who have been so successful. But I'm not going to make those excuses. I know that I'm better than this. I'm sorry to the team who stuck their necks out for me, for getting me here and allowing me to play. The rest of my teammates effort is never going to be an issue with this locker room. They fought right until the end, battled and got into the end zone on that last possession. Teams that have less character, they're not fighting at that time in the game. So I'm really proud of them. I'm sorry to the fans. I know there was a lot of excitement going in this game, and I didn't deliver. I'm going to be making sure that this is, if this is the starting point, then we only got up to go from here. The good news is that we got a short week, quick turnaround. Good news is that we're still early in the season, and it's anybody's ball game in the West. So that's really how I feel about that.
That was, I caught that after the game when I got home, and I'm like, wow, he certainly was wearing it. And I mean, it had been a whirlwind week for Nathan Rourke. The other takeaway, Remis, that I have, and I think this is partly why you had so many people from elsewhere in the Canadian Football League pulling for him when he was down in the NFL, and happy that he's back in the CFL, even if he's with one of the other rival teams. You're talking about the starting quarterback on one of the best teams in the league, a guy that, you would think, would really be not loving, wanting to stick it to it. I can't help but be a huge fan of Nathan Rourke. And as I said, I think the Bombers got them at the right time. And hey, the Bombers have been his kryptonite. He's 0-4 against Winnipeg, 10-1 against everybody else as a starter in the league. But you can tell he wears the responsibility of his position with that team, even just fresh back for a few days, and what he had to say afterwards.
Yeah, some great comments there from Nathan Rourke. And yeah, there were a lot of high expectations, maybe unrealistic, considering he hadn't played a game, a real game in 2 years. He did play preseason last year. He played, limited reps with Atlanta. It was 2 weeks ago now. So he just really hadn't played. And Jeff mentioned a lot of, who was there? Hatcher was there, but so many guys who were there before are not. Rhymes, Whitehead, and Brian Burnham. So, it is a bit of a different group of players. I imagine he'll find it eventually. It's got to be hard to not playing and to be thrust in, but we've seen guys do it. Like Joe Flacco came off the couch this year with Cleveland and just shredded the whole year to comeback player of the year. So it's definitely doable. He knows he can be better. I'm sure he will be. And Farhan, I'll agree with Farhan. The Bombers caught them at the right time here, BC, and taking that season series. And they now have the season series against Calgary and BC, and an opportunity to take it against Saskatchewan, which will be huge, for any tiebreakers. As again, they're all jumbled up there, 2 games apart in the West Division.
Yeah, think about Sask, like the fact that they have that tie. Unless the Bombers have a tie, there won't be, there will not be a tie. But
that's right.
The fact of the matter is they've got these home games, and in a lot of ways, I think where the Bombers and Saskatchewan finish in relation to each other will be decided in the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl. Here's one more clip from Nathan Rourke post-game yesterday. Was asked if maybe the expectations were too high going into the game, considering the quick turnaround, but he also gave a lot of praise to the Blue Bomber defense.
There were some things out there that I wish I had done differently. There were some throws that I missed, and hats off to Jordan Younger and the rest of his team for putting together a great game plan and giving us something to think about. So,
just on those throws, probably the 2 interceptions. Like, what did you see when you were watching the back on the sideline?
I saw some good plays. They're sitting on our routes. They were watching my eyes. Their corners are fast and athletic, and their halves are the same way. And they've done their film study. A lot of smart players out there, and they, obviously they had a bye week going into this, and they played us last, so they knew what was coming. And hats off to them, like I said, to Coach Younger and his team for executing. They did a great job. That's why they're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They make plays, and we got to be better. I think at the end of the day, we still feel confident about the fact that if we play our game, that no one can beat us. And I don't think tonight was an exception. But hats off to them. They did a great job.
All right, so there is Nathan Rourke, and I got to say, Reem, as far as Rourke goes, I expect we'll see a much better, more composed Rourke, and probably a guy that has much better numbers to show at the end of this game. But Ottawa riding high right now, 6-2-1, the number 2 team in the Canadian Football League by record. They get BC at home on Saturday. As part of what is another just wild week in the CFL. It just keeps on getting better.
Oh. Okay, whoa. I just got an alert here from Ren Lavoie about Patrik Laine. Well, I didn't mean
Hit
to...
me.
I didn't
Hit me with that Ren Lavoie.
Of TVA.
Is a guy that knows what's up.
I didn't mean to derail this Nathan Rourke.
Well, we were just finishing the CFL conversation anyways and going into hockey, so... What does Ren have for us?
What a classy individual, Nathan Rourke. This is the translated Google tweet from French to English. Ren Lavoie tweeting, nothing official yet because the transaction has not been approved by the NHL, but everything indicates that Patrik Laine will be traded to the Canadiens.
Oh, of all teams. The Habs.
Yeah, so there's that.
I was, listen, we've talked about it before. I was really hoping that there might be a way that we might see Patty back in the peg. But I'll tell you what, regardless of where he ends up, it's very clear that this last couple of years has been really tough for Patrik. I'm a fan of his. I know many of you are as well. And I will say this, going into a place like Montreal, they have some good young talent. It's a great hockey market. He'll have the opportunity to help that team win some games, and most importantly, get himself back on track personally and professionally in the National Hockey League. As much as I can't stand the Habs, I will take that as opposed to potentially somewhere else in the Central Division and have to see him coming in. Every year, the Habs coming into Winnipeg is sort of a big deal, and I imagine if this does happen, as per René Lavoie from TVA, who is incredibly well connected, sort of like the French Elliot Friedman, if you will, that'll crank the stakes up for that Habs game even more with another return from Patrik. But wherever he ends up, sounds like it potentially could be Montreal. This is a guy I think most people here in Winnipeg just want to see get back to doing what he did that brought so many Jet fans out of their seats for the years he was here in the Peg.
Yeah, and Montreal hasn't had a 40-goal scorer since Vinny Damphousse in 93-94. Imagine if Patrik Laine would be the first one in over 20 years for them. He'd certainly be a superstar. They have a lot of young talent. They're kind of on their way up on this rebuild. That would be a huge boost. I'm curious to see what is going to be given up. I haven't got off this tweet because I'm screen sharing, but I'm sure the information will come out very soon. And I'm sure they'll sell a lot of jerseys there.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that will be the case if Laine does go there. Do they have a 29 already?
29?
Just trying to think, or will he just be his usual?
Let me see. I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, anyways, that we'll get into that as we go forward. But rumored, René Lavoie, potentially Patrik Laine, on the move to the Montreal Canadiens. Be very interesting to see what the return is from Montreal back to Columbus if the trade is officially consummated, as well as what happens with that salary. So that'll be a story that we'll pay attention to over the course of the next little bit. Speaking of hockey, while we're at it, because we'll get to the Coolbet Lines, we got to get our horse picks as well. Let you know if you tuned in late about how you can join us for our Lock Shop, Winnipeg Sports Talk, Edmonton Sports Talk poker tourney tomorrow night online. There was a bunch of moves yesterday by the Edmonton Oilers. Now, they have until tomorrow morning to match the offer sheet from St. Louis, the offer sheets for Holloway and Broberg. But they actually made 2 trades on the weekend, one of them acquiring a player. Edmonton acquired Vasily Podkolzin from Vancouver for a 4th-round pick, and then last night traded Cody Ceci and a 2025 third-rounder to San Jose for Ty Emberson. Cody Ceci hates the St. Louis Blues right now. I will tell you that. And it's an interesting move in that they traded, one of their only 2 right-handed, right-shot defensemen to San Jose. Although I'm not sure this makes anything more clear. I saw Jason Gregor. I saw Dusty tweeting earlier on today that they still think that there's a possibility that they don't match one or both of those players. So that's kind of what's happening on this Edmonton scenario. And tomorrow on the program, we'll see where that all shakes out, whether Holloway and Broberg are St. Louis Blues or whether they're back with Edmonton at massively inflated contracts. And if you're watching on YouTube, you just saw that. But Elliot Friedman has just tweeted that Patrik Laine is a Montreal Canadien. So any dreams of Jet fans to see Patty back to fire up the power play and to get another run in Winnipeg won't happen, but he is coming back to Canada and doing it in Montreal as he tries to get his career back on. But what did you think about the offseason work or the weekend work by Stan Bowman and the Oilers?
Yeah, well, first off, you mentioned about 29. Shout out to Dom and Doug Phil noting that it is retired by Montreal by Ken Dryden.
Oh, Ken Dryden, of course.
Yeah, Ken Dryden, wore 29. So someone speculating, Doug Phil saying 92 for Laine.
Didn't Jonathan Drouin wear 92?
Yeah, I'm curious.
First number with Montreal. Maybe he just starts new and goes with I don't know. There's a lot of retired numbers though with Montreal more than any.
Here's this list. There's so many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 twice, 7, 9, 10, 12 twice, 16 twice, 18, 19, 23, 29, 33. That's wild. The number of retired numbers. It's like the Yankees, except Montreal hasn't won anything in 20 years. So, actually, sorry, I can't do math. I said Vinny Damphousse 94 was 20 years ago. That's 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
That's 30. I can't do math.
Yeah.
I'm just getting a lot older.
I'd like to think it was 20 years ago. Unfortunately, it's not.
Getting a lot older here, Huss. Yeah, so they haven't won anything in 30 years. Yeah, I was saying 20 before. Anyways, about the Oilers, I was curious what they were going to do. I think it made the logical move to dump the CC contract. Seems like a lot of money for Broberg. Weren't they? They were offering him 1.5.
He was asking for 1.8.
And then St. Louis comes over the top with the 4.5. I mean, he'd be pretty silly, to turn that down. I mean, as much as you want to stay with Edmonton, you got to look out for number one.
The thing is, he didn't want to stay with Edmonton by all accounts. I mean, he kind of is looking to go elsewhere. He kind of figured that he's only played 81 games. Now, they may think more highly of him at this point after the playoff run that they did at any point before that. And it's funny how that sort of thing can change. But, okay, here's the deal. Laine and a second to Montreal for Jordan Harris.
The salary dump.
And there is no retention in this deal. And the Habs get a second rounder as well. I mean, Harris is not nothing, but he's certainly not Patrik Laine if he's at his best. And as they say, moving that sort of money was tough. I was kind of poking Chevy yesterday before about, Laine, what's going on with that? And not sure, but the fact of the matter was that was going to be a difficult contract to move because they didn't want to keep any money. But they got it done. It cost them the player they gave up Pierre-Luc Dubois for and a second-round pick. And in return, Jordan Harrison gets to join that young Blue Jackets team on the rebuild.
Yeah, that's I don't know what's the reaction from Montreal on this one. I have to think it would be positive. You get a second and Laine, and the salary was a huge part. Not a lot of teams had that much salary room, and Columbus didn't want to retain. You want to have that flexibility, and Jordan Harris could be a young impact player for them, but I think Laine has potential to be the best player in this deal, and we'll see how his contract plays out and what happens with him in the future. If you can return to the guy who scores 40 goals, I mean, huge for Montreal. Looking to get back in the playoffs, and I think Ken Hughes has done a lot of good moves there since becoming GM. This slow rebuild, but kind of accelerating. But I mean, they really you had to give up Jordan Harris, but you also get a second round pick. So I gotta like this move for Montreal has.
Yeah, I mean, Harris, a young 24-year-old defenseman, has played the last 3 seasons. I mean, most of the last 2 seasons with the Habs. I mean, last year, 56 games, 3 goals and 7 assists for 14 points. Played 65 the year before with similar numbers. So he moves on, gets a fresh start with the Blue Jackets. And Patrik Laine is a Montreal Canadian. Wow, never thought I would see the day.
I'm texting with some friends right now. One of them commented to me that it's funny that Laine gets to go to Montreal, and now it's Pierre-Luc Dubois who's stuck in D.C.
That actually is pretty darn funny for sure. After all of our conversations about Dubois and Montreal.
Yes.
Laine goes there in the deal today. Hey, listen, before we get to the Coolbet lines and our picks, amazing weekend at the ballpark with the lone exception of the scoreboard. Just a crazy series between the Fish, who lost on Friday night in a real tight one, a relatively tight one, 6-3. Then another, how many times this team has lost 1-0 this year? Can't remember. The Bark in the Park with those wild dog jerseys and the dogs all over the place was a 1-0 win for Sioux Falls. And then they completed the sweep with another tight win yesterday to the tune of 5-4. The good news for the Fish is they are still in first place. They've got a half-game lead over Sioux Falls. They've got a 1.5-game lead over the Fargo Moorhead Redhawks. And now they go on their final road trip of the year. Travel day today. Massive, massive series against Fargo Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday before heading out to Kansas City for their final road trip of the year. Then they come back a week today, opening this final homestand. Gary South Shore Railcats in Monday to Wednesday, a day off, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Labor Day Monday, games against Lincoln, and then playoff time right now. So goldice.com for tickets. Make sure to get out to the ballpark that final week, and fingers crossed we'll be able to talk about some Gold Ice playoffs right here in the Peg in the first week of September. Shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. Had a great conversation with Chevy about some of the Jets that have been up there in the past. Connor Hellebuck, a regular. I know Chevy's done a number of charity trips up there, raising money for local charities and going there. Man, it's just such a great spot. If you are into fishing, you like a fly-in fishing experience where you can be on the water in a couple hours from the city of Winnipeg with just amazing hospitality and food back at the camp. The amazing shore lunches, great guide, staff, everything. Aikens has it all. Go to aikenslake.com for more information about booking into the 2025 season. And if you've really got the grip, you might be able to get in for one of the final days of the fishing season into early September. Again, aikenslake.com and at Aikens Lake on all of the social channels. A huge thank you to Corey Johnson and everyone at Breezy Bend that had me out yesterday to MC and sit down on our little chat with Kevin Cheveldayoff yesterday. It was an absolute pleasure to be there. Amazing just to see how healthy that club is. A full 160 golfers in the member guest tournament. Everyone had a great time. Cheveldayoff was awesome with his speech, and our interactions later on. People really did enjoy it and really appreciate the support of WST from so many people that were there last night. If you're looking for an amazing long-term home for you and your family at one of Winnipeg's top private courses, check out Breezy Bend. Give Corey Johnson a call. He can fill you in on membership for the 2025 season. And you can also find out more online at breezybend.ca. And just tagging along that for our Breezy Bend golf report, shout out to Hideki Matsuyama, who won the first leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Tough final round for Nick Taylor. He does not make it to the next stage. And I would say his status for the President's Cup very much up in the air after a great start to the season, but a really rough last few months. All right, we got to do some Coolbet lines, and we've got to get to our picks for the track. But why don't we start off with Coolbet? Again, if you missed it earlier, right off the top of the show, tomorrow night we're doing our first poker tourney with the EST guys, us here at Winnipeg Sports Talk, and the Lock Shop. It is starting at 9 p.m. our time. It is basically a $30 entry, which is actually 20 euros. The poker provider Coolbet runs on is in euros, so that is what you'll see. But basically, it's $30. There is a $100 bounty on my head and on Dustin Nielsen's head. And we invite you all to join us. If you enjoy playing online poker, this is what you're going to want to do. Now, the best bet, if you just go to Coolbet, when we're looking at the lines, you'll see at the top there's sports, there's casino, there's poker. If you just click on poker, as you see Remis doing right now, click on that green, download the Coolbet Poker on your computer. That's definitely the best experience for it. And then once you have that, and again, if you've already been playing at Coolbet, you don't even need to sign up. If you haven't signed up before, use the promo code WST and you get a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. You can basically register in the sports book and then just go over to poker, enter in the tourney. You'll go to tournaments and just go down to tomorrow night, 9 p.m. our time. You'll see it. Or there's a search, and if you just put in lock, the Lock Shop tournament will come out. But I think Iwanek and Gazzola are going to be in it. Remis is going to be in. So if you do enjoy online poker, join us tomorrow for our first event of the Lock Shop Poker Series, kind of kicking it all off, starting a little slower. I mean, we didn't really promote it a ton last week because we were just working out a few kinks, but we're ready to go now. It is tomorrow night, and as I say, if you've got a night off and you want to hang out with us, download the Coolbet Poker app, go into tournaments, and enter in tomorrow, 9 p.m. Cannot wait to see you there. And by the way, speaking of Coolbet, I will take a little victory lap. I talked about the 3 road teams on the money line on Friday's show. Montreal, Edmonton, Bombers. Allow me to bury Horowitz myself for that plus 7-1-2 winner that we got at more than 7-1. And a special thanks to Aaron Bronstetter, who dropped that little nugget of Dirkus Duplessis by a submission in UFC 305. That one paid more than 5-1. So thank you to Bronstetter for one heck of a tip. I saw SK asking earlier about the Bomber money line, and he said he saw it for the game at plus 114. Dude, it kept going up and up and up. It went as high as plus 134 and then came down. I got it at plus 127, which was nice. And I think it finished in and around plus 125. But there was certainly some money to be made on the Bombers last night. I hope you got on it. All right, here's what we got for this week in the Canadian Football League. The lines are out already. The Riders are a 2.5-point underdog on Thursday against the Toronto Argonauts. We'll wait to see who the starting quarterback is for Toronto. Keep in mind, Chad Kelly, it's not like he'd been practicing with the club all year long. So is that a little too much to ask him to just get right back in it and start? We saw what happened to Nathan Rourke with such a short period of time. We'll see. But the Argos are 2.5-point favorites and minus 149 on the money line. The Bombers have opened as 7.5-point favorites at home against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I have a feeling that number might go up. Bombers minus 385 to win. Hamilton plus 290 on the money line. Close to a pick 'em in BC Ottawa. BC is a 1-point favorite in Ottawa against the Red Blacks. Hell of a start for Jeremiah Masoli, getting back in the absence of Drew Brown and getting that big win in Calgary. Ottawa minus 104 to win. BC minus 116. And BC a minus 1-point favorite. And then the final game of the week, the class of the league right now, the Montreal Alouettes 9-1 after a fortunate victory in Saskatchewan on the weekend. They're at home to the Elks, who have won 3 in a row. This is a big test for Edmonton, though. They are 3-1 underdogs to win. Montreal is minus 400, and the point spread is 7.5. One other thing I'll bring up, and I got to shout out Chris Beck, WSTer and Lock Shopper, who pointed me out. Earlier this morning, the Bombers were 7-1 to win the Grey Cup. And again, keep in mind, they started as the favorites at around like plus 250. By the time I did the lock shop, it was plus 650. And now it's 6-1. However, if you bet the Bombers and you throw down, say you want to get the Bombers at plus 6-1, you can use the 20% multiplier for the week. Every week you get one CFL bet, whatever it is, and you can add the 20% multiplier. So on a future, it can end up being significant and getting a much better number. So if you've been waiting for a good time to get in on the Bombers, I would suggest now might be it. I don't think that number's going up anywhere and probably more likely going down. Montreal is the favorite at 2-1. BC plus 215. And the Bombers have gone from 7-1 to 6-1 today, tied with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. All right, fun lock shop tomorrow. We got some more NFL futures coming up, and Dusty will be back tomorrow, so we'll get the latest on what's happening in Edmonton, and of course, a little tee up for our poker event tomorrow night when Dusty and I get going at noon. Again, you can check that out over at Edmonton Sports Talk. Remis, it is gorgeous outside. This is a heck of a nice day, maybe to hit the track out at Assiniboia Downs.
Yeah, here's just one thing for the poker. The link is in the description for the poker tournament as well. Anyone watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, just look at the description. It is there. I am registered. And I'll move on to the Downs, but here's Don Waddell has David Pagnotta tweeting out, "We want players that want to be Blue Jackets," and Patrik made it clear that he thought a change of scenery was best for him. We were able to acquire a good young player in Jordan Harris while maintaining financial flexibility in this deal, which was very important to us. We wish Patrik all the best. And yes, us moving on. Very beautiful night out for the Downs. Did you do picks on Wednesday when I wasn't here?
Yeah, I did, and they weren't very good.
Okay, I did picks Tuesday. I don't know if you did. I think I lost. Oh, I picked a lot of favorites. I think I was down like 6 or something. So wasn't great.
Yeah, I think I missed Tuesday, but I was down, I believe, 20 on. I'm just under 800 right now.
Oh, okay. So I'm. All right, so
you got a nice lead.
I got to still have a bit of a lead.
I'm going to be chipping into you. Today. Let's start it off. I'm waiting until race 3 to bet. So if you have anything in race 1 or 2, let it be known right now. 7:30 post time tonight. And again, if you do want to watch on YouTube and bet at hpibet.com, you can do that for Assiniboia Downs and tracks around the world. Where are you starting off?
Okay, I am starting off on race 2, and there's some big favorites in this one today. Race 2, let's go. I'm rocking. I did an exacta here because it's such a big favorite. I didn't box it. I'm just riding. It has Diamond Concerto to win and guaranteed delivery for second. That is my exacta in race 2.
Nicely done. Going to race number 3, I'm coming out of the gate with a $5 bet to win for number 6, CC's Kitten.
Okay, I'm going with Side Street Dave to win this one. Big save. It's like Big Save Dave, but Side Street Dave. Kind of different.
Yes, indeed. All right, race number 4. I am making another win bet. We're going to go with number 5, second favorite in the event, Finalize with Rashad Knights on the saddle.
Not on this one.
Okay, so we get to race 5. Do you have 5?
Just 6 and 7.
Okay, me too.
Okay.
What do you got for 6?
I'm playing it safe here tonight. I'm only going for winners. I have horse 5. No. Sorry, I can't read.
Right.
Race 6, I have horse 7, Frisco Kid.
This is a weird race because there's sort of 3 big favorites. I was going through all of them. One's like moving down a class, so it's expected to do very well. Rydam's been awesome. I'm just taking these. Like, it's different orders from the program selections of the smart picks. I'm going to do a triactor box 5, 6, 7 in any order for race number 6, which brings us to the final race, number 7. Remo, what do you got for 7?
I'm going with number 2, Lucky Appeal.
Oh, wow. Okay, I've actually split this up. I would sometimes do a triactor box. I haven't done that. I'm doing a $2 exacta box with 1 and 4, Green Amazon and Dare to Endure. So that's a $4 bet, $2 either way. And then I had $2 remaining. So I've done 2 triactor bet, 2 $1 triactors. I've got 1 and 4, my Quinella. They can finish either way, 1-2 or 2-1. So for horses 1 and 4. And then I've added number 3, Kentucky Jake, as the 3rd place horse. So a $2 wager on top of my exactor box with number 1 and number 4. And hopefully this can be somewhat of a catalyst moving forward. Don't forget, we're back at it Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday right now for live racing at Assiniboia Downs. And we're going to have a little bit of an extension of the season into September, which is great news, which gives me a little bit more time to try and catch Michael Remis and retain the crown as opposed to having to go back and forth every year on this program. But there you go. There are our picks. Again, if you want to bet online, hpibet.com is where to go. But there's no better place than getting down to the track. Free parking, free admission, amazing food. And if you are planning a night maybe ahead, make a reservation at the clubhouse dining room. It is always incredible eats and incredible service and a great way to spend a night. Victory Monday was fun, Reem. We could talk about this Bomber game for another 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, the Bombers' dominance, especially on defense, the last 2 games has been incredible, real turnaround from the Bombers team early. I mean, I just remember Vernon Adams going up and down the field in that home game. Not the case for the last 2. And as Jeff said, the secondary really coming along. 2 interceptions yesterday, when at the beginning of the year, they really weren't getting any turnovers. They're getting quarterback pressure with Willie Jefferson. Haba coming back yesterday was huge. And Taiwan Garbett becoming healthy. Everything seems to be clicking right now for the Bombers defense as they prepare for the second half. And again, I texted you. We need a big Bombers win for a good show Monday. So happy to be back in the chair. Feeling good. This is great. So it was great talking about the game. Lots of good stuff. And we had a Patrik Laine trade, so we can just lead it off with that. And we'll have to see if the Oilers are going to wait to the last second to match. To not match.
Tomorrow will be a great day to talk hockey because we're going to get clarity on the Oilers situation and how that shakes out. And, of course, we'll have some, maybe even be able to hear from Patrik Laine if they have a press conference tomorrow. We will have all that there. You mentioned last week, again, a big thanks to Andrew, who did an awesome job making the show continue. And we even got a marble race on Friday, which was amazing. And, of course, Connor Rabchak, who was an awesome tag team partner for all of our convos while Remis was away. And don't forget, right now, If you haven't checked it already and you're with us on YouTube, do us a favor, head on over and check out Connor's latest, the WST Week in Review, which touched on the huge Bomber win last night and a very tough weekend series for the Fish at home. They still remain in first place, though, off to Fargo to get a massive 3-game series going tomorrow. We'll stay on top of that and let you know how it goes throughout the week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Bombers coming up on Friday. We'll have Mike McIntyre coming up in the next couple days as well. So have a great evening tonight, gang. And tomorrow, we'll see you here on Winnipeg Sports Talk at 1. And for all of you poker players that want to join us, download the Coolbet Poker app and get in on the first ever EST-WST Lock Shop Poker Tourney tomorrow, beginning at 9 p.m. on Coolbet. Go into tournaments, search the Lock Shop, or go down to the time of it, which is tomorrow at 9 p.m. Get your ticket and join us. $100 bounty on myself and on Dustin Nielsen. That's going to do it for us. For Michael Remis, Andrew Paterson here. Thanks to all of our sponsors and a great crew. Everyone kind of getting out of holiday mode and getting back to the normal routine. Great to see a few of you back that haven't been around for a while. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow again. 1 p.m. right here on WST. Have a great night.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.